The morning sun slipped through the lace curtains of the Carter kitchen in suburban Connecticut, painting soft blue and gold circles across the oak table. Evelyn Rose Carter, Evie to anyone who'd known her longer than a polite nod, stood at the counter, her fingers gently arranging a small bouquet of chamomile and lavender in her grandmother's old mason jar. 41 years. The number rested in her chest like a river stone, smooth, heavy, unmovable. She hummed quietly, almost without realizing it, the opening notes of Can't Help Falling in Love, their wedding song. Richard had been so nervous that day, dropping the ring twice before she steadied his hand and guided it onto her finger. The memory tugged a small smile to her lips, though it never quite reached her eyes these days. The kitchen smelled of warm banana bread, brown sugar, butter, a hint of vanilla. She'd been up since 5, mashing overripe bananas the way her grandmother had shown her, flour dusting her forearms like snow. Richard used to say her banana bread was the only thing that made Mondays bearable. Used to. Lately, she wasn't sure what Richard found bearable anymore. "Morning, darling," she rehearsed under her breath, though he wasn't home yet. He'd said he was going for his usual walk. Lately, everything came with an invisible tag, or so he said. The flowers looked perfect in the jar, petals still fresh and dewy, chamomile for calm, lavender for peace. She'd bought them herself yesterday when the delivery from the florist never arrived. "No order under Carter, ma'am," the girl on the phone had apologized. Evie had simply smiled, chosen the stems, and paid. After 41 years, you learn how to fill the empty spaces yourself. She heard the front door open, heard Richard's footsteps in the hall. Heavier now, slower. Everything about him felt heavier these days. His silences, his shoulders, the way he looked at her like she was furniture he'd forgotten to move out. "Coffee's ready," she called, glancing at her reflection in the toaster. Hair swept into a neat silver chignon, the sapphire pendant her mother had left her resting against her collarbone. She looked exactly like the woman she'd spent a lifetime becoming. Maybe that was the trouble. Richard stepped into the kitchen. Evie's practiced smile flickered out. He wasn't in his walking jacket. He wore the navy suit, the one reserved for board meetings and funerals. His face wore the expression she'd come to dread, jaw locked, eyes fixed somewhere past her left ear. "I made your favorite," she said, nodding toward the loaf cooling on the rack. "Thought we could have a slice with breakfast, celebrate properly." "Evelyn." His voice was flat, stripped of warmth, not Richard's voice anymore. This was Richard Carter, retired chief financial officer, the man who'd spent 38 years making sure numbers added up. "We need to talk." Her hands froze on the coffee pot. "Of course, sit down. I'd rather stand." The room tilted just a fraction. Through the window, she could see Mrs. Alvarez watering her geraniums. Normal Wednesday morning. Nothing out of place. Richard reached into his briefcase and set a thick manila envelope on the counter between them, right beside the jar of flowers. It landed with the weight of a verdict. "I've filed for divorce. This is your copy." The words arrived from a great distance, muffled as though he were speaking from underwater. Evie looked at the envelope, at the flowers, at the bread she'd risen at dawn to bake, at her own hands still wrapped around the pot. What?" "You heard me." His tone was cold now, precise, the same tone he'd used on auditors who'd tried to fudge the books. "This marriage has been over for years, Evelyn. We both know it. We've been roommates for a decade. Hell, maybe longer." "Richard, This isn't about one thing. It's about everything." He crossed his arms. She noticed his wedding band hung loose on his finger. Had he lost weight, or had he been taking it off so often the metal had stretched? "Is there someone else?" The question came out steadier than she felt. His jaw tightened. "Does it matter?" "Yes," she lifted her chin. "Yes, Richard, it matters a great deal." He looked away. "We haven't been lovers in years. You said it yourself last Thanksgiving. We barely speak anymore." "That's not an answer." "Evelyn, don't Evelyn me." Her voice cracked. 41 years, Richard. 41 years I've been your wife. I deserve the truth. Is there someone else?" Silence stretched between them like shattered glass. "Yes," he said at last, "but that's not why."
Get out. What? Get out of my kitchen. Take your envelope, take your reasons, get out. Evie! She turned her back to him, hands braced on the counter. He left without another word. The front door closed with careful softness, because even in betrayal, Richard Carter was meticulous. The house settled into a hush. Outside, Mrs. Alvarez was still tending her flowers, blissfully unaware that Evie's entire world had just folded in on itself between one breath and the next. Evie stood motionless for a long time, staring at the envelope. Then she reached for one of the lavender stems. The edges were already beginning to curl and brown. Funny, they'd only been cut yesterday. The law office of Margaret Ellis occupied the fourth floor of a sleek glass building in Stamford. Evie sat in the waiting room, hands folded over her purse, trying not to picture how many cups of coffee Richard had drunk here while planning to erase 41 years like a bad line item. "Mrs. Carter?" The paralegal smiled. "Miss Ellis is ready." Margaret Ellis was in her late 60s, gray hair in a neat bob, eyes sharp behind tortoise-shell frames. The office smelled of Earl Grey and old paper. "Sit, please." She indicated the leather chair. "I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances." "Margaret." Evie sat, ankles crossed. "Thank you for making time." Margaret opened the file. "I've gone through the petition, mostly standard, no faults, equitable split proposed. But page 38 has an odd clause." Evie leaned in. "What kind?" "Richard wants you to waive rights to any third-party assets he receives in the next 7 years. Income, inheritance, settlements, anything arguably traceable to the marriage." "Third party?" "Inheritance, mostly. This language is surgical. You draft it when you expect a windfall and want to lock your soon-to-be ex out." Evie's pulse quickened. "My father, Thomas Whitaker, died 3 years ago. The estate, Vermont properties, stocks, 2 small trusts, is still in probate. Final distribution any month now. The will splits everything equally between Richard and me." Margaret nodded slowly. "So, if the divorce finalizes before distribution, he can claim his share as separate property. Smart. Unethical, but smart." "That calculating?" Evie stopped herself. She never cursed. Betrayal apparently rewrote the rulebook. "Do you have a rough value on the estate?" "Last valuation was about $5 million. Could be more." Margaret exhaled. "That's life-changing money, and he's trying to keep every cent of his half for himself?" "I want to fight," Evie said. "All of it, as long as it takes." Margaret's smile was slow and satisfied. "Good, because your husband just handed us a very sharp weapon. Let's use it." Sophie Lang's kitchen in New Haven was smaller than Evie's, but felt warmer, cluttered with cookbooks, photos of grandchildren, the smell of cinnamon always lingering. They sat with mugs of chamomile that had gone cold. "I should have known," Evie said, staring into the tea. "The new cologne, the late meetings, the way he stopped looking at me when he talked." "Don't," Sophie said sharply. "Don't carry his shame. He broke the promises, not you." "I know. It's just—" Evie gripped the mug. 41 years, Soph. I gave him everything, and he left like I was disposable." "You're not disposable. You're irreplaceable. He's the one who's blind now." Sophie squeezed her hand. "What did Margaret say?" "She thinks he's divorcing me to dodge Dad's inheritance, wants it all for himself and whoever the new woman is." Whist low, even for Richard. "There is someone else." "Of course," Sophie's laugh had no humor. "Younger, I bet. Thinks compound interest is a spa treatment." "I don't know her name yet. Margaret recommended a private investigator." "Call her, today." Sophie leaned closer. "I know you, Evie. You're already thinking high road, dignity, forgiveness." "Screw that. You taught high school history for 32 years. You taught kids about justice, about standing up when power tries to erase you. Time to teach yourself the same lesson." Evie thought of the envelope on her counter, of Richard's flat. "Does it matter?" "You're right," she said softly. "Damn right," Sophie said, lifting her mug. "To new chapters." Evie clinked hers against it. The ache in her chest shifted, from grief to something hotter, cleaner, anger. And anger, she was discovering, was far more useful than sorrow. Laura Hayes' office in Bridgeport was fluorescent lit, IKEA furnished, with one valiant ficus clinging to life. Laura herself was mid-40s, compact, dark hair cropped short, eyes that missed nothing. "Mrs. Carter?" She stood, offered a firm handshake. "Coffee?" "No, thank you." Evie sat. "Thank you for seeing me." "Laura's fine." She opened a legal pad. "Margaret briefed me. 41 years married, husband filed, suspected infidelity. You want the truth?" "Yes. Who she is, how long, if he—" Evie swallowed. "If he loves her." Laura's gaze softened. "Evie, the love question rarely changes the math. He lied. He cheated. He's hiding millions. What matters is what you do with the facts once you have them." "I'm going to fight," Evie said, "for what I'm owed, after 41 years. Laura nodded. "Then we start with records. Phone bills, credit cards, 3 years back if you have them." Evie slid a thick folder across. "I brought 4. Laura's brows rose. "You don't mess around. I taught teenagers about primary sources for 3 decades. I know documentation." She met Laura's eyes. "Follow him. Take pictures. I want proof of everything." "It'll hurt." "I know." Evie stood. "But being replaced after 40 decades hurts more. I'd rather face the truth than live in the lie." Laura rose too, respect clear. 48 hours for prelims. At the door, Evie paused. "Don't spare me. Every detail." "Understood." Outside, October wind bit through Evie's coat. Somewhere, a younger woman was waking up next to her husband. Somewhere, Richard was building a new life on the ruins of theirs. But Evie Carter had been underestimated before, by superintendents who thought she couldn't handle inner-city kids, by her father who'd said teaching was nice for a woman, by the mirror most mornings. Not anymore. She caught her reflection in the car window, silver hair, fine lines, hands that had graded 10,000 essays, 67 and rewriting her own history. All right, Richard, game on. She drove home through the fading light, ready. Laura called exactly 48 hours later. "I've got something," she said. "Can you come in this afternoon?" Evie arrived 15 minutes early, old teacher habit. Laura set a folder on the desk. "Before we open this, you can still walk away, fight on financials alone, never look." "Show me." Laura opened it. First photo, Richard outside a Farmington bistro, hand on the small of a woman's back, tall, brunette, early 30s, emerald dress, smiling up at him. Claire Moreau, 34, marketing consultant, met him when she pitched rebranding for his old firm 3 years ago. 3 years? Confirmed affair at least 22 months, probably longer. More photos. Them at a hotel valet, walking the Connecticut River Trail hand in hand, laughing. "I'm sorry, Evie." Evie lifted one photo. Richard was smiling, really smiling, the way he hadn't in years. "There's more," Laura said quietly. Of course there was. She spread credit card statements. He's renting a loft in Hartford, 2 bedrooms, Riverview, $4,000 a month. Jewelry from Shreves, weekend trips to the Berkshires, roughly $90,000 in 18 months, buried in consulting and cash pulls. Evie felt ice settle behind her ribs. Not heartbreak, that had already passed. This was colder, harder. "Anything else?" Laura hesitated. "Receipt from Hartford Women's Clinic, 7 weeks ago, prenatal visit." The room spun. Evie gripped the desk edge. "A baby?" she whispered. "Yeah." She stood, walked to the window, stared at the gray afternoon. Somewhere, Claire Moreau carried Richard's child, their fresh start, while Evie sat in an echoing house surrounded by 41 years of photographs. "I need a minute." "Take all you need." There wasn't enough time in the world. After a long silence, Evie turned. "Keep going. I want everything on her. Education, past relationships, everything." "You sure?" "Positive." A week later, Laura called again. "You need to come now, not over the phone." Evie sat across from her 20 minutes later. The folder was thicker. "Full background on Claire Moreau," Laura said. "She's prolific." She slid a photo forward. "Daniel Hargrove, 68, retired insurance exec. Dated 2 years. She got pregnant, they married, divorced 14 months later. She walked with 1.4 million settlement plus child support. Another photo. Victor Lang, 63, private equity partner. Same playbook. Pregnancy, marriage, divorce in 13 months. 1.1 million plus support. Evie stared. She's done this twice. 3 times counting your husband. Different last names sometimes, low profile, but the pattern's clear. She targets wealthy older men, gets pregnant, marries fast, divorces faster, cashes out. Does Richard know? Doubt it. She's careful, but it's all discoverable. Laura pushed the folder over. What are you going to do with this? Evie looked at the spread. Claire smiling in court photos, leaving hearings with checks, the same satisfied curve to her mouth. I'm going to meet her, Evie said. Laura exhaled. Bad idea. Very bad. I need to see her face. I need to understand what she thinks she's getting. Evie, I've decided. Laura sighed. Be careful. She's good at this game. Evie's smile was thin. So am I, learning. The email was polite, brief, devastatingly civil. Miss Moreau, I'd like to discuss certain matters concerning Richard Carter. Would you be available for tea this Thursday, 3 p.m. at the Greenwich Hotel? Evelyn Carter. Reply came in 40 minutes. Mrs. Carter, I'd be happy to meet. See you Thursday. Claire. The Greenwich Hotel lobby lounge smelled of roses and money. Evie wore her best cashmere cardigan, the sapphire pendant, and her grandmother's pearl earrings, not to impress, to show she was still standing. Claire arrived on time, taller in person, dark hair in loose waves, green dress hugging the small but unmistakable bump. She moved with the confidence of someone who knew her worth and how to collect it. Mrs. Carter? Claire extended a manicured hand. Thank you for reaching out. Miss Moreau. Please sit. They ordered Earl Grey for Evie, peppermint for Claire, caffeine-free these days. Silence hung until the tea arrived. I imagine you know why I asked you here, Evie began. I have an idea. Claire stirred honey slowly. You want to know why Richard chose me? No, Evie's smile was calm. I already know why. What I want to know is whether you love him or if this is simply business as usual. Claire's spoon stilled. Excuse me? Evie opened her purse, placed a slim folder on the table. Daniel Hargrove, Victor Lang, both older, both wealthy, both divorced you within 18 months of marriage, both left you with 7-figure settlements and ongoing support. Color drained from Claire's face. It's quite a pattern, Evie continued evenly. Pregnancy, quick wedding, quicker divorce. How much were you hoping for from Richard? 2 million? 3? You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? Evie sipped her tea. I'm looking at 3 men, 3 pregnancies, 3 divorces. You're not building a family, Miss Moreau. You're building a retirement fund. Claire's composure splintered. You bitter old... Yet here you are, pregnant, while he divorces me to marry you. How touching. Claire's eyes narrowed. He was miserable with you, said you made him feel like he was already dead. And yet he's drafting ways to keep you from his money too. Evie slid another sheet across, an email printout Laura had sourced. From Richard to his attorney, 3 weeks ago. Need ironclad prenup protecting expected inheritance, approximately $2.5 million from second spouse. Full isolation required. Claire read. Her hand trembled. He's planning to marry you, let you have the baby, then lock the $5 million estate away so you never touch it. Child support, yes. The big score, no. Claire's eyes filled. Real tears or practiced, Evie couldn't tell. Why show me this? Because I'm offering you a choice. Evie folded her hands. Help me. Testify about the prenup, about his plan to defraud both of us. In return, I'll ensure you get a generous settlement as the mother of his child, not as a wife. I'll even support your attorney pushing for higher support. You'd help me after I slept with my husband, seduced him while I baked banana bread and pretended we were fine? Evie's voice stayed level. You're not the first to fall for Richard's checkbook, Claire, but you're smart. Smart enough to see he's using us both. I have 41 years of evidence. You have 22 months and a baby. Think about it. Evie stood, left cash for the tea. My lawyer's card is in the folder. When you're ready, and you will be, call her. She was at the door when Claire spoke. Mrs. Carter? Evie turned. For what it's worth, I thought I loved him, at first. Evie nodded once. It doesn't make it hurt less, but it makes the fight clearer. She walked out into the November wind, hands shaking, not from fear, but from something close to triumph. She had looked the other woman in the eye and hadn't broken. Her phone buzzed. Sophie, how'd it go? Evie typed, I think I just recruited an unexpected witness. Sophie, that's my girl. Drinks tonight? Evie, definitely. I have stories. The probate courtroom in Hartford smelled of wax and anxiety. Evie sat beside Margaret, navy dress, pearls, calm as a teacher waiting for a tardy student. Across the aisle, Richard sat with his attorney, expensive suit, expensive sweat on his upper lip. Judge Evelyn Torres entered. Everyone stood. She was early 60s, dark hair streaked silver, eyes that had seen every lie. Be seated. Hartford versus Hartford, preliminary hearing. Richard's lawyer rose first. Your Honor, this is a simple dissolution. Long marriage, irretrievable breakdown. We've proposed equitable terms. We ask for expedited processing. Expedited. Margaret stood. Your Honor, nothing here is simple. We have evidence Mr. Carter concealed assets and timed this filing to defraud my client of a substantial inheritance due any day. Objection. Speculative. Overruled. Continue, Miss Ellis. Margaret laid out the hidden accounts, $420,000 moved in 5 years under business expenses. Richard paled. Further, Margaret said, the inheritance from Thomas Whitaker, approximately $5 million, is willed equally to both parties. Mr. Carter filed precisely to sever the marriage before distribution. Timing is coincidental, the lawyer sputtered. The doors opened. Claire Moreau walked in, visibly pregnant now, heels clicking. Your Honor, I'm sorry I'm late, but I have testimony this court needs. Richard's lawyers shot up. She has no standing. I'm carrying Mr. Carter's child, Claire said calmly. I believe that gives me standing. Torres raised a brow. Approach. Claire handed over the prenup draft. Margaret scanned it, grinned. Your Honor, this is a proposed prenuptial agreement dated 2 weeks after filing, explicitly shielding the Whitaker inheritance from any future spouse. Murmurs rippled. Richard's face drained of color. Torres studied the document. Mr. Carter, cared to explain why you were drafting prenups before your divorce was even granted? I was planning responsibly. Planning to defraud 2 women at once? Claire's voice cut through. Mrs. Carter was right. You lied to both of us. Torres banged the gavel. Order. She fixed Richard with a stare. I've presided over ugly divorces for 25 years. This is among the worst. You're not just abandoning a 41-year marriage, you're attempting to cheat your wife and your unborn child. Your Honor, save it. Torres turned to Margaret. Full financial audit ordered. All assets frozen immediately. No transfers over $500 without court approval. Mr. Carter, complete disclosure in 30 days. Every account, every withdrawal. She looked at Richard. Pray your lawyer can climb out of this hole, because right now you're looking at a very costly reckoning. Gavel. Adjourned. Outside, Margaret was grinning. His face, that was poetry. What now? Evie asked. Now we wait for the audit, but Torres is furious. That's gold. 3 weeks later, the audit arrived. Bound, brutal. Evie sat in Margaret's office reading. Hidden accounts, bogus expenses. Then, the kicker. $590,000 to Vermont Lakes Development, she read aloud. Margaret nodded grimly. Real estate flip 3 years ago. Collapsed. He borrowed from his own consulting firm to cover losses. Technically legal, financially suicidal. The firm's underwater. Banks calling loans. Without the inheritance, he's facing bankruptcy and possibly fraud charges. Evie exhaled. He's not greedy, he's desperate. Exactly, which means you hold every card. November 20th dawned bitter cold. The estate attorney's conference room smelled of coffee and tension.
Evie on one side, Richard on the other. They hadn't spoken since court. Final accounting, the attorney said. Thomas Whitaker estate, $5.2 million. Equal division, $2.6 million each. Richard's eyes flickered with relief. However, pending divorce complicates distribution. Mr. Carter's counsel argues his share is separate. Margaret smiled. We've heard that song. Evie spoke quietly. May I speak with my husband alone? The lawyers exchanged looks, but filed out. Richard looked 20 years older, thinner, hollow-eyed. You look awful, Evie said. Karma's thorough. He tried a smile. It failed. I could destroy you, she said. Take half the inheritance, watch you lose everything. I know, I deserve it. She studied the face she'd loved for 40 decades. I'm not going to do that. His eyes widened. You're not? You can have your share of the inheritance, all of it. Evie, but the house transfers to me. Clear title, no liens. Retirement accounts split 70-30 my favor. And you set up a $600,000 trust for our daughters Sarah and Lily's college. Non-negotiable. He nodded rapidly. I can do that. And one more thing. Her voice hardened. You sit down with our daughters Sarah and Lily. You apologize, fully, for the lies, the betrayal, the example. You tell them you were wrong. They deserve better. Tears tracked down his face. Anything. And after that, we're done. You see Sarah and Lily when they allow it, but you and I, no holidays, no calls, no shared space. You lost that right. Understood. She stood. I forgive you, Richard. Not because you earned it, because I'm tired of carrying you.
She walked out, leaving him crying alone. 1 year later, the lake house in northern Vermont was small, white clapboard, red door, windows facing the water. Evie sat on the porch wrapped in a quilt, watching dawn turn the lake rose gold, coffee steaming in her hands. Her phone pinged. Sarah. Mom, Lily got into Dartmouth. Early decision, full ride. She says it's because Grandma's trust gave her the courage to even apply. We love you. Evie smiled, typed back, tell her I'm bursting with pride. The manuscript on her lap, her memoir, was nearly done. Working title, 41 years later, a history of starting over. The agent said it could sell. Sophie called the title too long. Evie liked it anyway. More coffee? Sophie called from inside. Please. Sophie emerged, pot in hand. She'd moved in temporarily 7 months ago. Neither mentioned her leaving anymore. Any word from Richard? Sophie asked, settling beside her. Sarah says he's managing, part-time consulting, small apartment in Hartford, sees Lily once a month. Sophie snorted. Better than he deserves. Maybe. Evie looked at the water. I don't think about him much anymore. Strange, isn't it? Not strange, healthy. They clinked mugs. 2 new chapters. To new chapters. Evie catched the pendant at her throat, her old wedding band, melted down and recast as a tiny silver lake with a sapphire drop. Some endings could be remade beautiful. She looked out at the lake, at the life she'd built without apology. Local history classes at the community center, garden club, book group, friends who knew her as Evie, not anyone's ex-wife. You know what? She said suddenly. Sophie raised a brow. I think I'm happy. Sophie laughed. Took you long enough. Better late. Damn right. The sun climbed, painting the sky in colors of second chances. Evie smiled, not careful, not brittle, but real. This was joy. This was freedom. This was hers.